audio and visual podcast, a weekly discussion about all things guitar building and some random tangents as well, featuring members of the Guitar Builders Collective from all around the world. The Guitar Builders Collective is a like-minded group of individuals that have come together to share their experiences, knowledge and inspiration for guitar building. Each week you can join us in the live YouTube chat or catch up at a later point. It's also available as audio where you'll miss out on seeing our lovely faces and some of the visuals we share along the way. You can also find the Guitar Builders Collective via our forum, over on Instagram where we share images of members' builds. We've got a thriving Facebook group, and we do hope that no matter what your experience and knowledge is, you'll become a welcome member of this community too. Great. Hello
there.
Good evening. Yeah, so those that are watching live on YouTube or in the future on YouTube, you can see our faces. And those on the audio, I'll just let you know who's here. We've got all the way from Australia in the bottom corner, Arran from Adair Guitars. Welcome back, Arran.
Good evening.
We've got from America, Mark and Scott from Bonehead Guitars, Mark from himself, both in Texas. Oh, I noticed another guitar builder from Texas on Instagram the other day. I'll message you about them later. Maybe there's someone you know. I appreciate Texas is so big, you might not. And then in the UK with me, we've got Dave from Footstep Guitars.
Hi there.
And Simon Chapman joining us today.
Hi.
So Simon's a member of the Guitar Builder Collective. And actually, I think you're probably one of the people that post the most over on the Guitar Builders Collective forum, which I'm sure we'll mention a bit more later on. And I met Simon at, was it the London Guitar Show you came up to?
I think it probably was. I don't know if we saw you in the first Bristol one, but we certainly met in London, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that was brilliant because it's great to meet people in real life who you are aware of, or maybe I hadn't necessarily been aware of you or made the connection straight away, but we know through kind of the forums, the Facebook, the Instagram and YouTube, which is one of the reasons I love doing this, is a chance to talk to people. But it's very different when you're actually a real person. And it was great hearing you just say how excited you were about this podcast and your own guitar building, very enthusiastic. And from that, I found out a bit more about what you've done and one reason to get you on today.
Thank you.
So listen, as the episode goes on, we're 100% talk about the work you're doing with a kind of community charity building workshop where guitars are made. We'll talk about the particular project that you've done, which is on the thumbnail for today, the guitar you built in, or your team of people built in 12 hours for Billy Bragg. I love Billy Bragg. I've seen him live quite a few times. In the videos that you sent me, he plays my favourite song as well, the A30.
Yeah.
Which is based on a road that goes across, from London through Essex, past where I grew up. So it always had a bit of... Dave's laughing. Did you know the area going down through Essex to goes through Thurrock?
I'm sort of slightly familiar with it. I'm south of the river.
Yeah. There wrong side. I moved south. But I was in my late 20s. I moved south and lived there for 15 years. I don't understand why people complain about going backwards and forwards under and over the river and have it as such a divide. But it's a physical thing, and people like to be in their camps.
Little zones. Yeah.
But Simon, I thought it might be good, if you don't mind, just asking a little bit about how you got into making guitars, or even just what your story is with guitars in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, playing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing about 1975. A bit before then, I used to play in folk clubs in the Midlands. I went to school in Lichfield, and those people like Jake Thackeray were on the scene then, so I quite enjoyed that. I played bass in a blues band at college, and then family, kids, career, everything kind of took over. I didn't really do much music for a long time. And then I played more saxophone in the last sort of 10 years. But I've always enjoyed guitars. I've always made things. I'm an engineer. I've always taken things apart, put them together, fixed things. mainly cars and bikes. But a friend of mine before lockdowns found this guitar making class in a local village in Nailsworth. And there weren't any spaces then, and I was probably still trying to work anyway. And then we had lockdown. But after lockdown, there was a space, and I went and I started making a guitar for myself and found out much more about this community workshop, which does so much more. Um, and I started volunteering there. There's the guitar side, and there's other things that happen that I'm involved with. But on the guitar side, 2 mornings a week, Gavin that runs it teaches volunteers to make guitars for charity, and the community of people that make these guitars often have alcohol problems in the past. So that's where I also practiced the skills. And I think if I was just going once a week to make a guitar for myself, obviously it's harder to really practice the skills. But yeah, we get the guitars sponsored by local companies when we can, and then donate them to charities. So local music colleges, and we've even given one to a prison for the organisation that teaches music at the prison. And I've started just making my own designs there. I go into the workshop on other days as well, apart from those 2 mornings.
So you're also involved with helping now, because you've been helping a while, helping other people with their builds, teaching them.
Kind of. I mean, I guess it's an organic thing, isn't it? You know, you learn, you practice, you teach, and you know, I'm not working against a deadline, so I still go to I still pay and go to the guitar making classes. But if I don't really work so much on mine, and I can help other people and help Gavin out, because sometimes he's pulled every which way. As long as it's a process or a job that I'm very experienced in and well practiced in and have confidence in. There's certain things I don't really do because I'm not qualified to teach. So, unless anybody's really adept at things, I wouldn't like to go and teach people to use a router, for example, the table router. I try to keep people away from the table saw. But I can show people how to cut out a template on the bandsaw, for example, and all the hand processes as well. So I enjoy the whole thing, and I think without going in more days a week, as I say, I wouldn't have developed the skills to the level that they're at now, because it's all been quite new, since lockdown.
It's crazy. Just had a comment I put on the screen about from BB Guitars, the idea that there's quite a few people we've met that really not necessarily started building during lockdown, but committed to building. It became more of a full-time part of their life.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, Daniel, because I think one of the other triggers, I mean, I knew this friend of mine, Sean, had been making guitars. And before I ever went there, I found some stuff on the internet during lockdown. And I think it was Chick's Guitars when he did the Bookshelf 335. And I saw what he was doing, and I was just bitten. That was it then. As soon as I saw what he was able to do, and I started. I think Todd said, didn't he? Sweet Tea. He said that he studied all the internet stuff for 2 years before he even bought a piece of wood and dared cut it or something. I mean, I did a lot of background watching and reading. But yeah, it's been great. It's been great. It's been a creative outlet as well, because I mean, I know, Daniel, you're an artist. My boys are both artists in various ways, and it's not something I've naturally done. I mean, I could never draw or paint, and my practical things have always really been around cars, bikes, metalwork, machine shops. So this is something nice and new and different, and I quite enjoy a lot of the carving and the different shapes, doing the arm carves and things. It's quite satisfying when it comes off.
And out of interest, has it got you back into playing much?
Yeah, it has. Lockdown did that. I mean, one thing I did do during lockdown was have a a fairly rigid regime for practicing the saxophone. So, I mean, I can't read music very well, so I really did study and work on the saxophone. But there's a guy in America who's a guitarist. I think it's Learn Jazz Standards. His name will come to Brent Varstra. And I bought some materials from him. And when they came, even though they were for the E-flat saxophone, the alto sax, they came with the grips and the chord voicings for both piano and guitar. So I learned all of the harmony for the jazz tunes I was learning on guitar, and that got me playing more. And then I watched a Robin Ford thing the other day, and he was talking about he didn't know many guitars when he was just playing the early blues stuff. So he got Mickey Baker's book. So I got Mickey Baker's book, and I'm working through that as well, which is very hard.
Dave, does that got a meaning to you?
No, but it's fascinating listening to you. No, I was just thinking back as well to what we were saying just a little bit earlier about the lockdown getting people building guitars. And you were saying, like, Todd studied for a couple of years and you'd looked for a couple of years stuff. There is nothing like actually doing it, is there?
No.
To actually learn. I mean, and that's the one thing that I've learned, I suppose, over the years I've been building guitars. You've actually got to get down there and do it. I mean, and there's not that many mistakes you can make, he says. But at the end of the day, that can't be fixed. You know, it's one of those things with wood. You know, you can do pretty much anything with it. So it was nice to hear you say, you know, I mean, you talking about jazz and stuff. I mean, I love jazz, but I mean, I'm hopeless when it comes to trying to learn it all.
Well, I think I might be playing in a jazz band in a few months' time. So I play sax, but they've got a small band, and the guitarist can't make it. So I mean, I'll only be comping with shell voicings, but I might go and give it a go. We'll see.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we'll see. And as you say, most things can be put right, but I always think about one of Scott's comments saying, you know, your first guitar is always going to be a disaster or whatever, or is never going to be the best. And I think that's right. But I suppose I was lucky because it took me nearly a year just to finish the first guitar. And by then I'd been volunteering quite a lot. And I also had a really good teacher. I mean, Gavin is a fantastic teacher. He studied at West Dean, you know, same place as Ben Crowe. So I mean, we know Ben now. I don't think they knew each other then. But when you've got somebody who doesn't accept second best either, you know, the standards are really high, even though it's volunteers. So I was quite pleased with my first guitar. Sorry, I missed that.
Dave, your audio's gone. Oh, we've lost Dave. He'll be back.
Okay.
Just
but I mean, I've got it here. This is the first guitar I made, and apart from the fact that it's a little bit heavy, but you know, this is the fretboard on this is from a table that was in my garden for 35 years. It's épée. It's really hard. And then I didn't intend having this pickup combination, but the more I got into it, the more I decided to design things. And I remember when I was doing this book match, one of the common comments was not good enough, do it again. And I'm pleased he didn't accept it until it was finished, because it's come out great.
Yeah, I'm sure with
it's a bit heavy. It's oak tabletop, but it's great.
I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just you take that much time with your first one, and if you got some, you know, some kind of guidance, then I mean,
yeah, absolutely agree. And you know, I could not have done this on my own. I can't imagine buying, you know, sorry, that's someone at the door. I can't imagine buying tools and setting up a workshop and then trying to teach myself and do it. I don't think I'd have time or patience to do that. Being able to go to a workshop, and it's like I guess it's like going to Crimson to make a guitar. You know, you've got people on hand all the time, and it's a different kind of learning experience, I think.
Yeah, like Scott often says, it's hard to believe someone's first guitar is that good. But when you've got someone telling you that's not good enough, that that drives you, doesn't it? Because you would have, if you'd finished it with the things where he'd said that's not good enough, you would have seen them later when it was finished. You would have looked at it and thought, you probably would have thought that's good for my first attempt, but to be getting those mistakes corrected as you're going along at the beginning is a great skill.
I think it's great, and having the people around in the workshop, Daniel, as well. I mean, people will tell you I procrastinate and I put off jobs that I don't want to do. So you can tell when I've got a nasty job I don't want to do, or if it's a job I'm doing for the first time, because I'll drink coffee and I'll wander around and look at what everybody else is doing and put it off, you know. But when I did the Jurg's Cup guitar, it had a Fender F-hole in it. And I'd cut it out on a scroll saw fairly close to the line. And normally I'd finish those with small files or something. And Gavin said, oh, you could do that with a knife. And I kind of parked that thought. I wasn't in a hurry to finish it, and I parked that. And then we've got a guy in the workshop that used to make violins, and sell them, a proper violin maker. And he looked at it and he said, oh, you need to get a sharp knife for finishing that. So I sat at this table for 2 hours with a razor sharp craft knife, and I've got to say, it's been really good. You know, it's come out really nicely. And with the pitch pine that you can see through it, I finished the pine underneath. But I would never have believed I could have done that until I'd done it, and that's quite common with a lot of the jobs. Really, I wouldn't have believed how successful it could have been until you actually do it, and you know.
Look, Simon, just before we carry on, we've obviously there's some people listening on the audio, hopefully, to this, because we've just gone audio. What I'm going to do is I'll put links to your website, which I'm going to put up on the screen in a minute.
Oh, okay, sorry.
We'll be able to see the guitars. But do you think we can just go back to your first one and talk a little bit more about what it's made from, what it looks like, and those choices? If I put the pictures up on the screen for us, so we can describe at least to those.
The very first one, the Telecaster.
The one where you said so. Part of it came from your garden. Ooh. Yeah,
the fretboard, it's épée, and it was just an old pub type table. And it was lighter. It's gone darker with the finish on. I should say now, all of the guitars, the charity guitars that are built at the workshop, they're all recycled wood. On some of my guitars, I have bought slightly more expensive wood. So this is English sourced flamed sycamore on the top. It's a recycled piece of oak kitchen top at the back. And again, with it being my first guitar, I wasn't brave enough taking enough weight out of it. You know, when I was routing some of the inside or drilling with the Forstner bit, I didn't want to go all the way through, and I was a bit, you know, I wasn't very brave. So it's less than £9, but only just. So it's a bit of a lump, but it's lighter than the Les Paul. And then because it took so long and I was doing so much research, it was going to be an HSH guitar, but I decided to put a humbucker size P90 in the neck, which I'm pleased I did. I think I saw or heard a demonstration on YouTube of a Gretsch Streamliner, and somebody put these Vanson pickups in, and the solo on the neck sounded great. So I thought, well, I'll get one of those. And again, with my electronics sort of background, I was interested in all the wiring. I've put the wiring scheme for this on the Guitar Builders Collective as well. And actually, I've done loads of wiring schemes, and on my website, there's a resources page, and I've published all of my wiring schemes. And if anybody wants to chat about those or wants any help with that, it's sort of an area that I am fairly confident in. And I got the pickup cavity template from Crimson Guitars. That's their universal pickup cavity.
I definitely want to decided wiring in a bit, because wiring is something that I think a lot of people slightly shy away from sometimes. And I saw something yesterday that I want to talk about in relation to wiring. But just quickly, there was someone asked a question in the chat. It was Menno. Did you say what was it? He said, is it IPE? Did you?
Yeah, I think it's called Echo, but it's IPE. Yeah,
Right.
well, that's what we think it is. It weighs a ton, and it's one of the woods that some, I think you can get samples of it that actually don't float. But it's like Wenge on steroids. It's really hard, a little bit splintery. And I decided early on I wanted to use the spoke wheel truss rod. And again, I'm ever so sorry, I forget which video it was, but I saw a video online where the guy cut the groove and cut the slot on a table router, and he'd got this T-shaped jig. It was like a base with a flat piece on it, and you put the neck vertically on it and run it into around a slot on a table router. And I've done it various ways. I think on that one, the spoke wheel is flush with the back of the neck, so there's like a recess into the neck as well. Other ones I've just done. There's my cardboard cutout. On other ones, I've actually got an overhang, and the spoke wheel sits in the body.
Yeah, so if you're just listening on the audio, you're not going to see this, but I'm sharing on Simon's website this build, and it's got on it as well his design process. So you've sort of drawn it out on cardboard. I have drawn lots of things on cardboard as well. I use tracing paper a lot, and I'm glad to see you're doing that as well. Yeah. You've literally traced your design to make the template, it looks like. So you put that over the wood and marked where some pieces are going.
And fine dots there, so I could mark through onto the wood for the belly carve.
Yeah.
But I just get these boxes from the supermarket, and I find them quite useful for, trying bits of templates. I have a smaller one just on the inside for doing things like the arm carve. That one didn't have an arm carve.
It's cool to know that so much is recycled then, even the materials you design with.
Well, yeah, and the plywood that we use for templates, I think there's a friend of the workshop, and he fits out vans. He makes camper vans. So we get a lot of plywood donated, and that's great for making templates and things.
Awesome.
That's really nice, isn't it?
And on the neck, you've got these strips going through it, the stripes, where you've laminated it up.
Yeah, all the necks are laminated. Gavin also teaches longbow making, so we have quite a bit of purple heart. So those darker strips, there's purple heart running through the neck, and we use that quite a lot, just for decoration, really.
It's interesting because definitely a few years ago, I noticed with the Great Guitar Build-Off how many people were using purple heart.
Yeah.
But I had no idea it had a very common use. Are you implying that it's a common material for longbows?
It's what Gavin uses for longbows. I think it's got particularly good properties for longbows. And now I'm out of my area, but I believe so.
Fair enough. It's always interesting to hear across. We all think, oh, rosewood. Yeah, that's fretboard, musical instrument fretboard material. But it'd be funny if one of us was a longbows person, whatever that word would be, a longbow user, to know that purple heart is the traditional material for that, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how traditional it is, but you just showed a picture there. I decided I was going to make it a universal wiring thing for this super switch. So I used these Japanese solderless connectors and wired all 6 pins on every connector, and then it was quite a squeeze getting the wiring in the hole, but there we go. You can see there's a bunch of resistors there, and that's to kind of take 500 down to 250 for the single coil positions. So there's quite a bit of wiring.
Yes. So how do you? So the single coil position, as in, is the humbucker split or the single coil?
Yeah, Yeah, you're reminding me of things I've forgotten, Daniel. The bridge humbucker in this is quite hot. It's like a JB. I think it's the Iron Gear Dirty Talk or something. And the default position, because it mixes better with the rest of the guitar, is like a PRS partial split. So I think it's got a 2.2K resistor across one of the coils, and that's the normal position. And so if you want the full fat 16K, it's got a push-pull pot. So you pull the tone pot, and then you get the full blast. And then we were talking about the humbucker size P90. That pickup is wound exactly the same, electrically as the single coil in the middle. So position 2 is the split humbucker and middle, and then position 4 is the split humbucker and neck. So you get a kind of so you get the Telecaster position effectively with the neck pickup. But you can't. What you don't have on that guitar is middle and neck. But that's fine. It's not a Strat.
One thing that we talked about a bit with Daniel from Quendo Guitars was sort of choices people might make that's unique to the actual player. So obviously you were building this, and it's for you. And he sits down with his clients to really talk things through. Arran mentioned last week your guitar you're designing so you can try out all the different combinations. And I'm becoming more and more aware that I would just build a circuit, I wire it up just to sound, so that when I'm playing it in my workshop on my monitor, I have a monitor, not a big amp, it sounds good. But I'm thinking more and more that if I'm going to be selling guitars I've already made, I should put in an option for people to tell me a bit more about what they play, and then I can change the wiring for them before I send it on. Because there's all these, like the options you're talking about do you want it a bit hotter or not? They're things that I think are quite important. Yesterday I saw a video. To be fair, I only watched it on my phone, so it wasn't great on my phone, but it was Andy, the guitar geek, demonstrating a guitar he had where he just upgraded all the wiring but didn't change the pickup. Normally a thing that I guess a lot of guitar players would do as an upgrade is change pickups, but he put in new volume and tone controls, new output jack, and better quality wires, and not just the cheap things it came with. And then he gave demos of how the tone control worked compared to how it was before, how the volume control worked, playing it clean through his amp, playing it through pedals, playing it in different ways. And on my phone, I couldn't really tell the difference, but he said it was really noticeable.
He did say that, and playing it through my really nice hi-fi, I couldn't tell any difference either. It's interesting. It's like the argument about bumblebee capacitors and all the rest of it. As an electronics engineer, I kind of find it hard, but if within the capacitor also the resistance changes, maybe. I think one thing's for sure, though, full-size pots are going to last longer, and I'm sure they're nicer to use. They probably turn more nicely. They may be more nicely graduated.
Full size pots feel much better. Like they feel good. And as far as that demo goes, Daniel, I think something that should have been done is basically the use of a multimeter, because if he could have shown us what the differences are, like in voltages, that would have been sort of an ideal test instead of using our ears.
I mean, he said from the outset he was certain one difference would be the quality of them, as in how long the components would last, and potentially what they feel like. But yeah, you're right. I mean,
and different wire, as we know with pickup wire, 42 gauge wires, less resistance than 44. It's good wire is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, resistance is important. Like the best wiring I've ever done is a 1/4 pounder Telecaster pickup straight to the jack. No volume, no tone, just 2 wires straight. It was the best tone I ever got. And I don't know if that has to do with like less resistance, more resistance, no clue, right? But it was just such a fantastic tone. And Van Halen, notorious for taking his pickup straight to the volume. I mean, no tone, right? Straight to the volume, straight to the jack. So yeah, there's something to be said about sort of minimal wiring as well.
Yeah, the guitar that I've been working on for the blue one, the respray that I was doing for my mate. That's all finished now, and he's got that one. But it's basically a single P90 bridge pickup. But the guitar had a 5-way lever switch from the original design. So what we've done is we've actually played around with the 5-way switch. We're going to put a 3-way switch in it. We didn't actually have one where the screws are right, so we ended up with a 4-way switch in it. And that's what I was playing around with, and now Stu is just what combinations we can get the straight to the jack, the volume in, the tone in, just the volume in, just the tone. We've actually had a bit of fun just playing around with all of that. Playing it at my house through the Vox amp. It sounded different than when he took it home to play through his setup. It was a lot brighter through his setup. So now he's looking at putting some fixed tone circuitry in there. So it's been a lot of fun just experimenting with that how much a difference it makes by omitting parts of the circuit or including all of them.
I mean, I personally, I'm not sure if you change your wiring, the literal wire, in a guitar, whether the resistance of that wire, slightly thicker, slightly thinner, is really going to make any difference, because it's such a short amount of wire on something that's not that massive. But who knows? Maybe for some people it is. We've got Joe from Hello Sailor Effects coming on next week, and he talks a lot about putting vintage components in his pedals, because it gives you sometimes the psychological idea that you've got this mojo in your pedal. And sometimes it might just be that, it might not really make a difference, but sometimes it might. And but it's the knowledge, the enjoyment of it all being there that makes it better sometimes.
So on that note, like I've done some vintage amp repairs, right? And a lot of the times you take those vintage resistors out and they're out of spec. 100% of those resistors are out of spec. The capacitors are usually dead, right? So if they're new old stock, I get that the mojo is there, but you can't just use like literally old stock, because those components are way out of spec or pretty much just broken.
Yeah. No, I've discovered from watching Joe, how people are buying new old stock, and it comes with like little certificates proving where it came from and its unusedness before. But he still tests everything, because they're not old components aren't as accurate necessarily.
Yeah, same here. Like I bought like a bulk vintage new old stock Russian germanium transistors to build fuzz pedals. It was just maybe about 20 germaniums, and I tested all of them, and like maybe 2 were good.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, Glenn Fricker did this on his channel, where he just says pickups make no difference when you're playing high gain metal. And I noticed on I just bought a new Yamaha THX like practice amp at home, and I had a guitar which had a split coil on it, and I was playing through this amp with the split coil on the clean sound, and it was brilliant, the difference it made. But when I got to the high end, I thought something had gone wrong with the switch, because it was making absolutely no difference in the split coil. And I kind of realized it's not making any difference, because everything's so overdriven there. I'm not sure.
I think it makes a difference. I was talking earlier about some of the session musicians I've been following and listening to, and we were talking about switches and switch design and the user. I'll maybe talk a bit about what Nick Granville's been saying to me as well. But I watched something with Tom Bukovac, and he said, everybody wants a great tone. He said, everybody thinks if it sounds good in their bedroom, it's going to be great. And then you get in the studio and you get it in a mix and it's rubbish. And he was saying the most important pedal on his board is the EQ pedal. so that he can just lift frequencies and mids if he wants, and because he's a session musician, sometimes he wants a different sound. And he was demonstrating this, and he got this humbucker guitar, and he just changed the EQ, and he said, if somebody needs a Filtertron sound, I can do this. And he just shaped the EQ curve, and it sounded like a Filtertron. And I thought that was really interesting that, in a mix, a guitar sounds completely different.
Mixes are like interesting because if you like isolate an instrument in a mix, like let's say you isolate the hi-hats of a drum set and you listen to that, that's not what hi-hats sound like in real life, right? If you listen to like a snare drum and you isolate that in a mix and you listen to a snare drum in real life, they don't sound the same. It's the same thing with guitars. There's so much attenuation and cutting to make things fit inside a mix that it's impossible to make your bedroom tone actually fit well inside a mix. It's impossible.
Well, as a metalhead, I've happened to run across a few little tidbits that stuck with me. People talking about the fact that guitar is a mid-range instrument. And, as a little metalhead, what stands out to you is the highs and the lows. You want some bass in so you can get some real chunk, but at the same time, the crispness at the top, which is why, at least bedroom players tend to scoop out the mids, which sounds awesome in the bedroom and disappears on stage or in a mix. Because I had never heard somebody say that guitar is a mid-range instrument. And it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And if you think about like all those like extended range players, like the 7-string and 8-string players, they're basically cutting all that low end out, and it's all basically like mid-range. So even those extended range, really low guitars, it's all mid-range because that's what you're going to hear.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name offhand of. Oh, we've lost Dave again. I don't remember the name offhand of the TikTok channel that I came across recently, but I started watching loads of his videos. The person's videos. I thought it was a man. I'm not sure because you only saw the pedal, the EQ pedal, and demos of different types of sound. So it would take the thrash metal genre and it would give 5 examples of sounds. And it was just him altering his EQ pedal to match different sort of variations of sound. And then he'd have a different genre and have EQ pedal setups for it all. It was just really interesting how much you can do good EQ pedal like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember, we've talked about him before, I can't remember the bass player's name who on his bass has a special button for studio engineers. When they say it doesn't sound quite right and he presses the button and then like that's it, you've sorted it out, and it's a button that doesn't do anything.
Leyland Sklar, he's the man that does that.
Fantastic.
Yeah. No, we're talking about sorry. Talking about session musicians again, and this guy, Nick Gravel, he's playing in the We Will Rock You show at the moment, and he's playing a PRS DGT, which he seems to be really enjoying. But he was saying that, and he really enjoys the splits, and I think the PRS do the splits quite well. But he was saying that I hate these speed knobs, and basically the tone control, he's taken a knife or something and scratched it all up so they can get hold of it. He says you don't want push-pull on a speed knob. You just, especially when you're playing, you can't get hold of the wretched thing. And I suggested maybe a push pot, and he says, you can't see where they are. And his main guitar, and he was an Ibanez sponsored player for a long time, artist for a long time, and he likes the toggle switches. So again, on a typical sort of Blue Peter job, I've been working out how I'm going to do the controls on another guitar, just with 2 like mini toggles. And I've not done that before, so I might try that. But if you've got room, I can kind of see how that might be a bit more obvious. May even last longer than a push-pull pot. I don't know.
I've wondered about the usability of a push-pull, because again, I mean, I've spent most of my life as a bedroom player, and I've wondered about a lot of these decisions, like control layout, as much as what types of controls are really going to be useful to somebody on stage, or how often they actually change things. And I would think mini toggles would be a great way to do a lot of things, rather than a push pull. Doesn't seem like a highly useful thing on stage, but I don't know.
I think with I mean, I don't know. I think with something like the Telecaster, being able just to pull that to get the full 16K is fine.
Yeah.
Interestingly, on the other of my own designs, I put two. It's a 2+1 guitar. I put two of the Strat pickups close together to make a bridge humbucker. And I don't know if you can see that, but on this guitar, it's all balanced, but position one is a little bit out of balance because you've got the humbucker effect, and it sounds great and it works really well. And if it's what you want, but you have to know it's there because when you put it into that first position, it does give you a kick. But this is the first of my own designs really. But I mean, I really enjoyed doing that arm carve, and I had this fantastic piece of quilted sapele for the fretboard, so that's come out nicely.
I wondered what that was.
Really nice.
Hey, just before we
just a piece of construction timber. Again, I've tried to make friends with the local joiners shops in the city, and they just got these 2 meter sticks of sapele construction timber. And I went in and he said, "Oh, I've been waiting for you to come in." He said, "We've got these 2 bits and they look kind of nice, and I've put them on one side for you." And it was this quilted sapele.
Wow.
Wow, that's good.
I'll share in a moment your photos that are on the website as well, so we can get a clearer view.
Okay. Yeah, I've used it on the back of the neck here for this one. That's
Yeah. Wow.
with the Wenge.
Lovely.
That is sexy.
I love that it's all recycled or reclaimed as well.
Or not paid for.
Not paid for. Yeah. Oh, it's recycled when it's the leftover bits of someone else.
Well, this is my kids' bunk beds. The pine is from my kids' bunk beds.
Nice.
They sleep on the floor now.
Now this is where I'm going wrong, because I've been using the old bed or the old cot from my youngest, and when you buy things from IKEA and stuff like that, you don't get the good wood you can use for your guitars afterwards. All you get is the wood you can use for storage in your workshop or little jigs and things. Just quickly in the chat, Jackson was mentioning his push pot on his Les Paul.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people say that they think they are more fiddly and easier to knock, but I don't know if that's true or not. It seems a bit arbitrary to me whether it's easier to knock a push than a push-pull, and not knowing what position it's in. Well, if you can't hear the difference in the sound, then maybe you don't need the push-pull in the first place if you can't tell the difference.
Well, that's really, really interesting because, again, I've had quite a nice chat with this guy, Nick Granville, and he was saying again, he only wants one volume and one tone. So his Les Paul has got 2 of the holes blanked out, and he's just got one volume and one tone on his Les Paul because he says it's too much to think about, too much to worry about when you're playing a gig or a session.
Well, I just shared on screen a note that someone had put up on one of the Facebook groups I'm part of. So it's about guitar wiring, and it is quite geeky in there. So all the things that you've been talking about trying out, Simon, they're the sort of things that people are always talking about there. But this guy who posted this, Millard Ellingsworth, said he was at Slash's Serpent Festival, where 4 bands were playing, all lots of guitars in them. And he said he can count on one hand how many times anyone selects the switch was not on the bridge pickup. And that made him feel a bit depressed as someone that's really into his wiring and all the different options you can have. And I think about this because I used to play in... someone's put in the chat that I'm not holding punches. I said that's... Anyway. Yeah, when I played in a band, I played bass. And at home, I had loads of effects pedals on my board. I could hear all the difference. And I loved playing at home with these pedals. It meant I could try different things out. I could write new stuff. I could just make like soundscapes. I could do whatever. I loved it. But when I was live, I realized you just can't hear any of it in the mix. So I just ended up using, I used to go through the PA with a distortion, basically. I had a little Tech 21 Sans amp, that and a chorus pedal, and that's all I needed. But at home, I loved it all. So I wonder if having all these options in your guitar is brilliant for certain situations, but like you're saying, Simon, with that guy who just needs his volume and tone for when he's doing a session job, that's really all you need. Back to what Mark was saying about it all being in the mix and how it works.
Yeah,
it comes back to what.
So people say there's been a lot of people saying that, I don't know why there's a middle pickup on a Strat. Nobody ever uses a middle pickup or doesn't like it. Well, I think it's just such a personal thing, isn't it? I mean, I'm not really a Strat player, I'm not really a guitar player much, but we went to see Anna Popovich earlier this year, and she played 3 different Strats. It was a fantastic set. She's a great guitarist, and she was on the middle pickup on every guitar all night long. I didn't see her touch the selector switch, and it was in the middle all night long.
I think the middle pickup has been a recent trend in the last 4 or 5 years, where you see a lot more guitarists, especially in the sort of metal genre, using that middle pickup and at least the in-between slots, 1 and 2, to get that kind of smaller sound, right? That tiny little squawky sound to, again, cut through the mix. And you see a lot of that with all the young kids. At least you did, before, the last 4 years.
Yeah, no, sorry guys, I've been dodging in and out because my mic's just playing me up. So I apologise if the sound's a bit rubbish. But no, just coming back to this, all in the mix. I mean, I think we fiddle around with all the guitar stuff, all you like. But at the end of the day, as you say, it's all of the stuff that you put in. The amp, the length of the wire to the amp probably has an impact. But that has so much more impact, I believe, on the sound than actually what we do with the guitar. Although I would say I do love the middle pickup of a Strat, and especially, as Mark said, when you use it in combination with the bridge on the neck, because it does give a slightly different tone, which you can't get by adjusting the tones on the guitar. Mm-hmm. But I think yeah, as you say, when you play live, the sound is so loud. It is really, really hard to hear any of these subtleties. And when you're in a recording studio, or in a home studio like I am, then I can make all the tweaks on the software. So I don't really need, there are some fundamental tone changes between the bridge and the neck pickup. There's no doubt about that. But and I don't think you could create that with an EQ. But otherwise, yeah.
Can we have a small tangent on treble bleeds? Because I can't stand treble bleeds. I want to hear everyone else's opinion.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, right. I'm gonna have to get my friend Ben on, who makes treble bleeds, sells them for a living.
Probably for me, for my recent builds, I think I've put them in probably the last 2 or 3, only because they're ridiculously cheap. Like $1 for the components, and takes 30 seconds to put in. So I've kind of been putting them in just as a matter of course. And most of the time, or when I'm using it anyway, it's sort of playing at home. So that's just that interaction with pedals and the volume and amp. So yeah, for me, I've kind of been doing it, but it is ridiculously cheap just to throw one in and quick and easy. So I'm curious to see what your thought is to not have them.
Yeah, so I'm a Strat player, right? I'm always on the neck pickup. I never use a bridge pickup. I don't play humbuckers. It's all single coils all day long. Always a neck pickup. And I love a Strat. And my volume knob is always on 6 to 7, and my tone knob is always on 6 to 7. The nuances you can get on a Strat is why I love the Strat. The nuances and all those complexities that are so tiny, but they're huge at the same time, with the pickup selector switch and the volume and the tone knobs. I love it. But with that treble bleed, without the treble bleed, I can get the nuances. I can bring down that volume knob, and I can get a different sound. And all the treble bleed is doing is giving you the same sound at lower volumes, right? And you can do that a number of other ways. And I just don't like the treble bleed. In fact, the first guitar I ever had with the treble bleed was a 50th anniversary Strat that I bought. I only bought it because it was the 50th anniversary, and there was just something wrong with it, and I couldn't figure out why it sounded so terrible to me. swapped out the pickups, could not figure out at all. And I realized it had a treble bleed because I always play like at, again, 5, 6, 7, and my volume knob is never full blast.
I think it's horses for courses, isn't it?
Sorry.
I think it's horses for courses, isn't it? I mean, some people love them. I know people with the same guitars. One guy says it's the best treble bleed he's played. Another guy takes the wire cutters and cuts it out as soon as he gets the guitar. You know, I mean, personally, I always use 50s wiring, so I always put the tone circuit after the volume on all my guitars, and it's just the way I've done it. I played around with treble beads a long time ago, but I've never on all the ones I'm making now. I don't use treble bead.
I'm a caveman. I don't see any purpose between 0 and 10 on volume. Volume could be a toggle switch for it's go on, and tone's kind of the same way.
I think
take
maybe
take the tone off and then just roll the volume back, as Mark said. I mean, that's the best way. Sure.
If I was making a guitar specifically for me, I might put a toggle switch for on or off, kill switch, and then no tone, no volume. I just nuance. I guess I'm not much of a nuance kind of person. I get the argument, and especially with single coils, because single coils seem to be so much more responsive to for all kinds of things. I mean, the nuance and finger. But as a wrecking ball little metalhead, I have wondered about putting like a humbucker and a single coil like stacked right on the bridge, because I basically live on the bridge too. I try to branch out and try other things. I'm like, that doesn't sound as good. This is bright and mean and hot, and let's go. I get. I don't know. I don't know where I'm trying to go with this.
Well,
I think it's interesting, Scott.
I'm actually making a video about treble bleeds at the moment. This is all going to go in it. So the treble bleed I've been using is the one from Marstronic, where it is variable. So with a simple screwdriver, tiny screwdriver, you can change the volumes of the resistors, and you can clip in and out different capacitors. One thing you can do as well is change the position of the resistors and how they fit in the treble bleed. So you've got quite a range of sound, and the idea is it can go in and with an on-off switch, and you can. And I think from what we're saying now, because I'm going to be putting them in my guitars going forward because I like them, but it's so easy to put them in with an on-off switch. That'd be a push-push or a push-pull. Anyway, so it'd be with an on-off switch. But there's so much variety on it that I think it's right, Simon. It just depends on how you like to play. And I definitely think when you're turning down your volume, but still having that tone cut through, it does make a different change to the amp to just turning the amp volume down. And it also makes a different change. I see Mark's laughing to what Mark's saying. And maybe it doesn't have that much of a variety. And as someone that only ever plays through my monitor in my workshop, or when I used to record, I just plugged it in and then did all the stuff afterwards, I'm not sure it really bothers me that much. But
I think for me, maybe going back to how I use it. So the shows that I do are there's generally 2 guitarists, and it's a rig that you mightn't have used a lot, and there's no rehearsal time, so you're up and on. So I think for me, it's maybe the ability to adjust the volume without the tone sort of changing. That if I feel I'm too loud, I can sort of drop it back a little bit without that sound changing. But yeah, it's sort of interesting. I'm going to think about it more now as I'm playing at home and changing things, because I'm a bit like Scott. So everything's on 10, and I kind of adjust things from that. But I'll have to play around with some single coils at Mark's volume levels, and just to experience that and see.
I always think about "Hot for Teacher," which is Van Halen's song, right? And it's the consensus is that Van Halen on the Frankenstein did not have a treble bleed, right? So and it was basically wired straight to the volume, and he would roll that volume down for that part in Hot for Teacher, and it sounded so gorgeous, right? And that's what you want. You want a little bit of color. You want the tone to change a little bit when you roll down that volume knob.
I can see that.
Yeah, I think it really depends what kind of player you are. I saw a guy, we went away, we were in Manchester and just playing in a pub, and he was playing some bluesy stuff. He was singing as well. And he had a Les Paul Junior. And I think with that style of guitar, you're riding the volume all the time to take it from clean to a bit of crunch into the amp, to push the amp a bit more. And you need the volume control because you haven't got a neck pickup. So you need the tone control because you haven't got a neck pickup. And the range of sounds he got from that simple guitar was fantastic. And he had no pedals, just a small tube amp, one pickup, two controls. But he was riding them both all the time to get the different sounds all night. And it depends. He wasn't a friend of yours, Scott. He was not on 10 all night.
Like I said, I'm a caveman. I get. See, I can't put that thought together. I can understand how some better people than me can put all that nuance to use, but I'm caveman.
I've got a set of guitars that I'm working on that I want to produce as a design that people can buy, and I'll make it for them when they buy it or whatever. But I've been thinking more and more that I just want to have a volume, maybe a volume and a tone on it. And then the options are if someone wants more of this space to put them in. And now I'm doubting whether I want the treble bleed in it as well, because the reason I wanted to just have the volume and the tone is to limit the choices, because I don't think you need all those. But I always thought the treble bleed was such a simple thing to put in that maybe that's worth having there. But then is that more complicated than just having another volume and tone? 2 volumes, 2 tones?
I think, honestly, Daniel, I think it's a tricky thing to get right, because the values of the capacitor and the resistor, and when I was using them, I had, I think, 2 resistors and a capacitor arrangement. But the values are different if you've got a PAF humbucker or a 16K metal bucker, or if you've got single coils. I think it takes a lot of tuning to get the values that work for that pickup and for the player.
Yeah, and for the amp and the amp level.
Maybe.
Recently I've been thinking a lot about how I used to do things a long time ago. The build coming up, I'm considering doing a bolt-on neck for the first time ever, and I remember for the longest time saying I don't see any point in doing anything other than neck through. And now I've gotten to where I really like doing a set neck. And I always said, what's the point of a bolt-on? That's the worst of both worlds. When would you ever need to replace a neck? That's stupid. The neck is everything. But the one coming up, I want to do some testing. I don't necessarily want to do another 2x4 guitar, but I might do a 2x4 body. So if I do a really nice neck, all right, so that's kind of a tangent. The point of this was thinking about how I used to do things. And the first big build I tried to do, I wanted to do the Jimi Hendrix wiring and, with treble bleeds and, in phase, out of phase, push pulls all over the place with 4 knobs. And it was a disaster. I couldn't get a sound out of it no matter what I did. And that frustration went into a bag that I still once in a while go in and pull out a push-pull pot from. But and now I'm thinking, I'm thinking if I built something for me, like I said, I would just stack a single coil and a Hummer right there on the bridge, and maybe like a 5-way switch, and where forward is dead. Just that only control. I don't know. Just recently, I've thought a lot about how much has changed in my perspective on so many things in building since the beginning. This is one of those situations where progress is slow enough that you generally don't see it. you don't think about, you know, how much I have grown. So I've run into this with other things too, where you can kind of come off as arrogant when the way you sound, when in reality you weren't saying, "Oh, why don't you know that? Everybody knows that." You really are thinking, I'm nothing special, and just, you know, I don't know.
I'm not going to bore you again with the build that I've been working on for over a year with the really complicated wiring, where most of it's gone now. But that's what the person wanted. So if they want it, I want to try and do it for them.
But
the reason we haven't done it is it didn't work together.
That's the thing with customers, though. They tend to, I want everything you could possibly imagine stuck into this thing. I want the kitchen sink, and I want it to launch satellites, and you know, instigate world peace, and settle down. There's only so much you can put in one guitar.
You made a comment last week, Daniel, about bolts and whether it's bolts or screws. Do you generally use bolts or screws on your bolt-on necks?
Me? Oh yes, I did. Yeah, I only ever use screws. I've got a guitar waiting to be together that has the I forgot what we call them. The in the neck, it's got the sort of ferrules, so you put a bolt in to lock it in place. I'm intrigued to use that, but I'm not sure it fits the.
I tend to only use machine bolts with inserts these days, and I don't know why. I think it's the engineer in me thought Fender was just cheap using screws, and I decided to use bolts, but it's all I've ever done, so I don't know any different, really.
I'll go really cheap. I just use one bolt, as you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I saw that.
One bolt. You don't need any more.
Hey Simon, so I think I was with you. I think my earliest build, I did the machine bolts with the inserts, because I thought, yeah, this is the way to do it if you're making a boutique guitar. But then I had an epiphany, I think maybe 2 builds later. It was and I guess I'm agreeing with Scott here. Why am I bolting a neck on? This is a custom guitar. The neck is never going to be replaced. So then I started doing, neck throughs, and I started doing set necks. And I think I've been on a set neck path basically for the last few builds. So yeah, I kind of moved away from the idea of bolting a neck onto a guitar body pretty far back now.
I think for me, because I have to travel to a workshop, it's easier to take necks and bodies separately. They fit in the bag, and I can get 2 whiskey cartons end to end, and it's the right length to put a neck inside, so that kind of protects it if I wrap it with bubble wrap. So that's kind of where I started, but I would like to do a set neck sometime. But I did post something on the Guitar Builders Collective recently where I changed a bridge, because on one of my guitars, the Les Paul, I had to put a shim in. I was using one of these kind of badass bridges, which is surprisingly high. And I ended up having to put a shim in, and it was all working fine. But I wasn't really happy with it. And then I found that Wilkinson do this wraparound bridge now, which is 3 millimeters lower, which has meant I can take the shim out, and it's a much more stylish bridge. But those sorts of adjustments would have been a nightmare if I'd glued the neck in,
Yeah.
But I don't know if has anybody used this bridge. I think the new Wilkinson bridge is really nice.
Hold on, let me just get that on the screen. Sorry, do you mind holding that up again, Simon?
Yeah, that's fine. It's quite a nice.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one.
It's 3 millimeters lower than the regular badass bridge, and unfortunately I didn't have to change anything because it screws into the same threaded inserts, and I'm really pleased with it. I couldn't get a nickel one, so it was a bit expensive. I've had to change the tuners and the strap buttons to chrome to match, but they'll get used on something else.
I've got to say, Wilkinson, I think, are really good. I just bought some pickups from them. They they're cheap. They're cheap, and one reason they're cheap is I think he doesn't have overhead. So my pickups came in bubble wrap in an envelope, in a padded envelope, as opposed to some more boutique, smaller companies who will have a really nice packaging and everything else with it. I think he's just going in for make it affordable, sell loads kind of model, and I do appreciate the range of stock that he. Sorry, I'm sharing on the screen. I'm showing on the screen your your build that you showed us just now with the two.
Yeah, that's the first of my own designs. I'm going to try and stick with that body shape, but I try to take pictures and have like a picture blog of the progress of the build, because I haven't got cameras and stuff. I'm not going to be doing YouTube. I'm not going to be doing anything else. But I mean, this is interesting because there was a guitar which was kicking around in the corner of the workshop, and I think it was like a neck through Gibson type design. It got a single piece truss rod in it. It wasn't very nice, and it had been abandoned. So I cut the neck off and flipped the body over and sliced it up a bit. The maple in the back of this is really hard. It's proper rock maple, but that was what was the neck through. So anyway, I cut it up, switched it over, inserted some more pieces of sapele in there, and gave that a new life as well. So that's nice. It doesn't show there, but the difference between those outer two pieces of real mahogany, or closer to real mahogany, and the harder sapele is striking when you're working with it. And especially on something like a router, all of a sudden it goes from a beautiful cut to a burn on the sapele.
This is that neck that you showed us before.
Yeah, that's as I say, it really has come up beautifully. I'm hoping it's hard enough, but I think with that much figure in it, it's like knots are harder anyway, aren't they? So I'm figuring that's hard enough for a fretboard.
I mean, is it for you?
That one's actually to sell. That's one that I made for my other main charity, the British Heart Foundation. So all of the guitars of this design, the Simon builds, I want to sell those for charity. I'm lucky to be around, so if I can raise some money for leukemia, as I say, the Jurgs Cup was a perfect fit for me because I had leukemia 8 years ago, and I've had a heart issue as well. So sell this one for the British Heart Foundation.
I think it's amazing, given the opportunity to build, and the build's going. One of the things I like about making instruments, that they're for other people, and they're for other people to make music with. And then if you're then selling it for charity to then go and support other people in other ways, it's just this amazing giving thing that you're doing.
Well, I mean, it's a hobby, and you can only have so many guitars in the house, can't you? I mean, I'm very lucky. My wife doesn't actually want me to sell any of them. She'd like me to keep them all. But as I say, it's a very, very different thing to anything I've ever done in my life, and it's a creative outlet as well, and I love it. And I really enjoy the whole teaching thing at the workshop as well, or helping to share and pass on skills. It's great.
So one thing I like about this is the pick guard shape. Really intriguing. It's got. It reminds me a bit of something kind of vintage. This little kink there for the screw makes me think. I
can tell you what it is.
Violin bow or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what it is. It's not that clever. I've got a 72 thin line, and I didn't like where the switch was because I kept hitting it. So I've kind of swapped the switch and the volume control round. I've cut the lower horn around the shape, and then the top is taken from a Strat pickguard, and I've kind of mashed it up and make it work. So it's a combination of a 72 thin line and a Strat, and my funny body shape.
Lovely.
One thing I wanted to ask earlier as well, because you've done something on this that you did on the other guitar, the Rose Cup one, is on your heel here. I mean, you've got the bolts going in, but on the other one you had the neck plate that sort of curved at one edge.
Yeah.
And is that something you prefer yourself as a player, to not have that kind of square heel back of the guitar?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, some of the other guitars are more pronounced. This is probably the nicest shape with the bolts. And what I've done on this one is I've kept it square at the top because it's got the junior kind of neck fit. But then that's shaped around there, and the bolts are set back a bit.
Because for me, that's one thing that I love about one piece neck. The one piece and the through necks is often the transition from neck to the body is so beautiful, which I don't think you really get with bolt-on.
Yeah, probably right. Yeah, probably right.
That was one of my objections to it. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with bolt-on. I don't know that you even really noticed that. I know with the Strat, it's never bothered me, the fact that you've got, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch of a square block there where the heel is, but visually it's just volutes. I was doing a volute for the longest time just because aesthetically it's pretty to look at, it's fun to do. The fact that it had structural function was just, icing on the cake.
Simon, one thing I forgot to ask before, when you were talking about all the electronics, and obviously you've got an understanding and a love of electronics. Where does that come from? What was your background in electronics then?
Yeah, I did an electronics degree back in 1980. Yeah.
Okay.
I've worked in computers most of my life, or in industrial engineering. So, yeah, that's kind of my background, and I think that's why I've taken a kind of engineering approach to things. That's why I like to draw things out and do things carefully. And I'm not quite. I know you've got Paul Richards on in a few weeks, and I love watching his videos, and I'm sure he doesn't just dive in as much as he pretends to, but I love the gung ho attitude that comes across. I try new things. I like to have new designs and things that I've not done before, or where I can see improving things that Fender or Gibson have done maybe. But I don't think they're too far out there. I think most of my designs are fairly conservative, and my approach is fairly conservative, probably.
Well,
I noticed
definitely.
I noticed with your wiring, Simon, one of the pictures we saw, they were all plugged in. I mean, was there any soldering in that? Do you try and avoid soldering?
No, it was bizarre, Dave. I didn't know anything then, really. I knew that I'd got this big get lost switch with 24 terminals on it, and I knew that I could get 4 of these 6-terminal JST connectors. And I thought, well, if I do it this way, if I change the wiring in future, at least I won't have to rewire the switch. Because I have had problems before with some of the printed circuit board switches with the tiny soldering connections, where if you're not careful, you can lift the printed circuit board. I've had issues sometimes if you get the angle wrong, or you get too much solder and you get the leg too hot, you can run solder all the way down one of those leaf switches. So I'm fairly careful, and I thought, well, if I separate out the switch from the rest, but I've not done it since. And you'll see that I've used a super switch on the Oaks Cup guitar, this one, and that's just soldered up properly. It's not coming out. It's not going anywhere. I'm not going to change it. But no, it's not something I avoid. It's not my favourite. I mean, and because I don't do it enough. I mean, I'm not bad at soldering, but it's not something, if I did it 8 hours a day, I'd be a lot better at it.
Yeah, it's not pleasant though. I mean, I sort of like the idea of plugging in, to be honest with you.
You do or you don't?
I do. I like the idea
okay.
of plugging stuff in rather than trying to solder it. But yeah,
Dave, I recommend you watch this stream back because it sounds like someone's playing with your tone controls. Or at least from my end, I think there's a slight internet thing where occasionally your stream slows a bit and then speeds up, so you're dipping deep, low, and they get really high. It's quite funny.
I don't know what's going on here. I lost complete sound. Oh, I could see you all, but I couldn't hear a thing, and I couldn't speak. So,
the joys of technology. Look, before we carry on talking, I just wanted to say, and I've said this before, if you're watching on YouTube and you can look back at the live stream chat, do have a read along. But there's lots of people in there that are regulars, and it's 100% worth checking out their YouTube channels and them on Instagram as well, because a lot of those are great builders, do interesting things. Some of them have been previous guests as well. And to those people that are there, if you can, I know some of you did last time, if you just leave a comment in the video description, sorry, in the under the video, which I don't know if you can do when you're doing the live chat as well, that'd be good for anyone watching in the future to click on it. And if you're over on listening to this on an audio somewhere, fantastic. But if you do want to see some of the images we're looking at, I've put links to Simon's website in the description for the podcast, so you can click on that or go over on YouTube and watch back if you want. But you can see on his website, his builds. We've only talked about 2 of them, but there's 3 up at the moment, and presumably, hopefully, more to come. But Simon, what?
I think there's 4 up there. I think all 4 are up. It should be up.
Right.
Yeah.
What I wanted to ask, Simon, if you don't mind, can we just talk about the whole going back to the Ellsworth Community Workshop?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the guy who said teaches you there.
Gavin Pond.
Gavin. Yeah. And is Pi Guitars his guitar brand then?
Absolutely, yeah. So the not-for-profit organisation that is the Ellsworth Community Workshop, it's called Practical Intelligence, and it's very much about they do homeschooling for children. They support children with various needs and adults with various difficulties. There's a men's shed where a couple of the older gentlemen have had strokes. They may not have more than one good arm. They may be non-verbal. I'm working with I've worked with 2 guys there who are fabulous. And one guy's been going 15 years. So it really is a community workshop. And Gavin, being a guitarist and, woodwork teacher and trained at West Dean College, he was keen to make guitars, to have a sort of 2 mornings a week where volunteers could come and learn to make guitars, and that's been very much his project. So I guess Pi comes from Practical Intelligence. Right. If you get Gavin on as a guest, he'll tell you all about why it's called Pi. But it's a great thing, and I think he was keen to do something with Billy Bragg, and it took about a year to germinate. But do you want me to talk a bit more about that and what happened?
Yes, but I would just say I've written a note. I'm going to contact Gavin because it sounds so interesting.
Yeah, he'd love that. He'd love that.
How about it? While you're telling us, I'm going to play one of the videos you sent me of an interview with Billy Bragg and showing some of the background of it being built. But I'll have the sound off so you can tell us about it, just so we can watch it. And I'll put the link to the actual video in the description so people can go and watch it later if they want. And also, it's got a bit of you in the background building.
Oh dear. Not fighting a fret press. The fret press, the arm was at completely the wrong level, so it's like vertical instead of horizontal. So I had to wrestle that to make it work. So there's some awful pictures of me as well. But anyway, it's all worked fine. So what happened? I mean,
sorry, just a quick question. Yeah. Does everyone in the chat know who Billy Bragg is? I can't remember if Billy Bragg's or just really a UK kind of person, or if it's someone that people would know internationally.
I've seen of him. Yeah, I've seen him a few times at festivals in Australia. So yeah, maybe 2 or 3 times, and yeah, aware of who he is and what he's done. I probably couldn't name a lot of his songs, but yeah, certainly seen him a couple of times.
Yeah,
New England is the favourite one.
Very
but no, I mean, he's actually exactly the same age as me. So, we have the same life experience or some similar life experiences. But Gavin wanted to do something with Billy Bragg, and I think the story goes a bit like this, and Gavin will tell it better. But he took a guitar to one of the gigs in Oxford, and that's Gavin there with the beard. And there were like 4 layers of bouncers and gatekeepers and managers that he had to get through and give the same spiel to. but he finally did get through his road manager and have a chat with Billy Bragg, and he got Billy to sign one of our guitars. And he sort of said to him, well, what I'd really like you to do is to come down to Nelson's. If we build a guitar in 12 hours and then you can do a gig with it that night. And I think Gavin said he just sort of looked at him and said, well, that sounds like the crazy thing I'd like to do, you know. So time passed and a few emails exchanged, and then he was playing in Bristol, and Gavin took one of our, you know, charity guitars down to Bristol, and I think it was during the sound check, and I think Billy plugged it in with his rig on stage and said, yep, I can play that, that's fine. You know, what changes do you want? He says, no, I can play that. So we got a date in the diary. We'd done a practice build, so we were kind of confident we could do it. And as you know, I mean, there's 4 main jobs first thing in the morning. There's the 2 halves of the neck and the 2 halves of the body. I was on the fretboard. I built a dummy neck so that it could fit in some of the other jigs that we've got for fret slotting and things. So we started at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd got the dummy neck, put the blank on, routed that to shape, put the camber on, cut the fret slots, put the frets in, level crown polish, sorted. So I'd got a finished fretboard by about 10:30. Most of the other things were finished by 10:30. I mean, I'm amazed that Gavin managed to carve the back of the neck pretty much without a fretboard on it. And then at 10:30, we did a bit of a glue up and had an early lunch. And we had we did a practice, so we knew it would work, but we used the regular tight bond for the glue up. But we left strategically placed islands where we could use super glue. And then we clamped it all really hard for half an hour while we had lunch. And then all afternoon, the super glue acted as a clamp for the tight bond. And then we had other people's making the control plate. Gavin's daughter did the electronics and did the wiring. We turned our own knobs for the guitars, and then Billy turned up at the workshop late in the afternoon after a fairly long drive from the south coast. So he saw the guitar being finished. He came back after he checked into his hotel, and then he was there at 6 o'clock in the evening to actually play the guitar. We did a countdown, and he played the guitar exactly 12 hours after we'd started. So it was all. You know, a lovely experience. The local news, well, Stroud Times took this video. Again, same as yesterday. The local radio station had a reporter, and I did a brief interview for them. And then we cleaned up, had some tea, and the evening concert had various players. You saw a violinist playing a minute ago. Forgotten his name. Is absolutely brilliant, and the guitar he was playing was made by the violin maker I mentioned earlier in the Nelson Community Workshop. So all of the instruments that were played that night were made in the workshop.
And that's fantastic.
One of the ladies is a breast cancer survivor, so hence the pink pickups. So that's the guitar that we built in 12 hours, and that's Billy Bragg on stage with it.
I love that little control panel cover on it.
Yeah. Well, and the lady designed that. That was a fresh design for this guitar, and that's what we're using on all of them now. So that was a new outing for that control panel. So yeah.
So Pi guitars have a standard sort of design, then, do they? That they make, and then
that's the standard design. It's based on a Telecaster, a thin line Telecaster. The sound hole is the 3 tiers. And it's a 5+1 headstock, which is Gavin's design, which I'm sure seemed like a good idea at the time, but we have to get those specially made in sets of 5+1. But we get them from either Kluson or Goto. Will make them up for us. And again, the guitars are finished with, you know, the best hardware. They're hand wound bare knuckle pickups. We always use the P90s. I think we're favouring the vintage wine now more than the other. And nice machine heads, nice wood.
It's such a great story to do it like that.
Super impressive, Simon.
And we sold one at the Bristol show, and to actually meet a guy who, who's worked hard for his money, he's paid tax on his money, and is buying an expensive handmade guitar made by volunteers in a small workshop in the West Country, and seeing him with his partner walk out with it, it's a great feeling. Yeah, I just need to sell more of mine now. I guess we all do.
I don't have an answer of how to sell. I'm getting more and more. I feel like I need to discover or interview more people and how they sell their bespoke guitars, because I feel very, very strongly that Daniel said this in here. Daniel went from Fender Guitars, said if you're at a trade show, people come over and they say, why is your guitar more expensive than that factory built? And then they sit and play it, and then they know why. And he said that always happens. And I feel that there's just a lack of understanding, maybe, or a lack of awareness that there's that option out there for sale.
Hey, Daniel, did you generate any sales off your short that got like 100K views?
Oh, here we go. It's on 225,000 views at the moment.
Nice.
It was someone playing one of my guitars at the Brighton Guitar Show. It's a short that has the guitar tagged in it. So as a product, you can click on it. And it also has, obviously, my channel on it. So you can subscribe on my channel. While I'm chatting, I'm just going to get up the stats if I can for it, because it's very interesting. So it was I think it's 30 seconds long. It's someone playing it. He's a good guitarist. He's a guitarist called Ross Stewart, who another stand had brought in to demo their guitars, and he just came over and tried out one of mine. Cool bloke. He's tagged in it, but he hasn't shared it. The Brighton Guitar Show's tagged in it, but they haven't shared it. Where is? Just seeing if I can click on the insights. Here we go. So the insights are. Can I see on here? I can't do it on here. You get more insights on my phone. So sorry to not be able to see it to you, but for 225,000 views, it's resulted in, I don't think, anyone asking me about where they can buy the guitar or having any interest in buying the guitar. It's fair enough, it's an odd-shaped guitar, but you'd think with that many people looking at it, someone might want to buy it. A number of comments saying they really like it, but maybe not necessarily to buy. And it's had 6,000 likes, it's had 360 comments, 850 people saved it, 99% of the people that watched it are not followers. It's had quite a few shares as well. It's hardly increased my following on Instagram. It's been maybe like 40 extra people following me. So it's interesting how something like that does or does not affect your profile or your selling. I'm not sure that's the way to sell. I don't know. But I was looking at some other channels that recently on Instagram have got 10,000 followers. So there's 84 Guitars. One of his videos has got 5 million views on it. And I wonder if that's one of the things that's helped him get up to 10,000 followers. But again, I'm not sure really if the views make a difference. I think what I need to have is something that specifically says you can buy this guitar and target it at people that want to buy guitars. It's 81 Guitars, not 81. 81 Guitar Works. I don't know. I don't know the way. But then, Mark, your videos get lots of views, especially like your 3D ones, your printing ones stuff. Do you find that leads to anyone buying your files and things? Oh, you're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, if I launched like a campaign, which is like I built the guitar, I filmed everything, I've set up all the files on my store, and I launch everything at once, like a campaign, then yes, I will see some passive revenue come in, specifically with that 3D printed guitar. So yeah, I sold quite a few files.
Great. Yeah, like I've been trying to sell a guitar for charity. Someone else painted, ARY Guitar Works painted, gave it to me to do the setup, and I've had no luck selling it. Even though we're trying to sell it really cheaply, really, just to make a small amount of money. And one of the things was, that's for Cancer Research UK, is even contacting the charities. They don't necessarily have a space that they can promote people doing things on their behalf. Just got to do it yourself. So it's quite a hard thing to do.
Yeah, and it's difficult. I mean, I've encountered that as well, Dan. I think it's difficult for some of the charities when you say, I want to sell this to make a contribution to the charity, unless it's all going to the charity. And we're selling quite expensive things. And obviously we need to cover some of the costs, hopefully. They don't really know what to do, because the charities, I think, have a real problem if they feel they're helping somebody else promote their own business rather than the charity. And, they're scared of any conflict of interest, I think. And I can understand why.
Yeah. It's fair enough. You don't want to promote something from someone that's going to make money for the charity if it then turns out that person's bad.
But I mean, I'd be happy. There's a British Heart Foundation shop. Should I go and try and hang the guitar in the shop with a price tag on it? I mean, the difficulty then is, there's only one of these. It's not like I've got 20 and this is one of a selection. If people are taking it down and playing it and knocking it about, I don't really want that in a charity shop, really. It's very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah. Who knows the best way to do it?
Daniel, I always thought that your guitars belonged in movies.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to get a bit more noticed on sci-fi collector pages like that. I initially, when I started making them, I thought people would want to hire them or buy them for being on sets and things like that, or music videos. And a way into that, I found one person hired one for a weekend, and that was it, really.
I kind of vaguely related. There are a few different restaurants and bars I know that just have guitars on the wall, and I've wondered, sitting there eating, if there was some kind of market for just wall hangers for that type of thing. Back before I lived here, the place I was at had a couple different cigar bars. And, when I had just gotten started and I was doing a lot of cigar box guitars, I would go there to actually, get boxes. And the thought had crossed my mind that they should all have cigar box guitars hanging on the wall. A cigar bar. I mean, come on. So I've wondered if there's some type of a market just for wall hangers for businesses. I mean, that would kind of be your stuff is probably, that would be a little bit amateur for your quality stuff, but this reminded me.
I think selling's are just a skill which is different to building.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's like, I grew up being told by lots of people on TV, if you're really talented as a musician, you will make it. Someone will hear your music and you will make it. This is before the internet stuff. That's not true at all. I know lots of people who I know write amazing songs, are really talented, but they didn't have the trust in themselves or the chance to dedicate time to not working, to going out there and making all of this music, not supporting their families, things like that. They weren't in the situation where they could do that.
Right place, right time, knowing the right people.
Yeah. It's really difficult as well, because I think we're all passionate about what we do and we're so proud of what we do and what we've achieved, and I think Gavin would say the same. At shows and things, we've often felt we could have pushed a sale. We could have really pushed a sale, but we don't push it. We rely on the customer to want it almost more than we want to sell it, so that we're confident it's going to the right person for the right reason, and that's not a way to think about business, but it's perhaps a more honourable way to think about what we're doing, and it's a challenge.
My whole life,
we're not double glazing salesmen, are we?
Thankfully.
My whole life, it doesn't matter if I'm writing software for somebody or selling them something I made. Nothing is more horrifying to me than the idea that anybody would regret paying me for what I did.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which would haunt me endlessly more than missing a sale.
I mean, that's I think the reason this guitar that's taken me so long to build taken me so long, because even though my customer's very understanding, I feel like I promised him too much by saying we can do this, we can do that. But he's been totally understanding. We've got to a point now where it's pared down, doesn't have everything in it that he originally wanted, but there's a reason those things don't work together. And hopefully when he gets it, he'll be really happy with it. And I think that is led to some sort of procrastination in not finishing the guitar, because of worrying that I'm making something that someone's paying for and they're not going to be happy with it, for reasons that were potentially beyond my control.
I've been there, and the one I started on a project that was kind of a commission. It's a relatively informal thing. I know the guy, but still it's a commission. And I started this before last GGBO's build, and it sidelined this thing. And now it's the only thing left on the bench, and I have to make some progress. But it's the hang up is he wants to take it to another luthier in town to do the wiring. And in my mind, another guy in town who I have met, who's a builder, is going to put eyes on this, and it has to be perfect for me, in my mind. Not necessarily for the customer so much as the other dude that's going to look at it. I don't want another builder looking at this and going, "What the hell was he thinking?" This guy's, especially somebody in town who, might hear my name sometime and go, "Oh man, the shoddy stuff I saw," I'm terrified.
Talking about sharing with other builders, I'm just going to share Simon's page on the Guitar Builders Collective forum. Just so you can see, because there was a question from Jackson earlier in the chat about if you had YouTube, Simon, but I know that most of your...
I don't, I'm afraid, no. Again, at the workshop, it wouldn't be easy to set up cameras and stuff. I mean, as Pi Guitars, we've made a few videos, but I just generally take stills of my work and post on here. And I think it's great to do it on here. So.
I would encourage anyone that's not joined to join. I'm not very active on it. I just don't seem to have the time to have another thing to look at. That basically, I don't really look at Instagram or YouTube or anything like that unless it's on my phone when I get a moment. And I have too many moments. But some people, the forums, the way they like to interact and that, and it's a great space for that. I've missed it, but somewhere you put up some of your wiring diagrams.
Yeah, in the wiring space.
There it is.
In the wiring space, probably. Yeah.
Oh, right.
But there's one there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a great forum, and people seem to support each other on it, and it's a great way of asking, for help, for showing things you're doing, getting feedback on it. Great place for sharing, basically.
It's interesting looking at a couple of the pictures you've flown past there. It still knocks me out every time you put finish on a piece of wood. I mean, you showed the top of my Yerkes Cup guitar on there, and it looks just grey and a little bit miserable. And then you put finish on, and all of a sudden it sparkles. It's just amazing. And that's one of the few jobs I do on this dining room table. I do some of the design, I do a lot of the soldering, and I bring guitars home to finish because we just use an oil finish. And every couple of days I put a coat on. But every time I walk past the table, I just use like kitchen roll and just buff it to help it dry and to help it get a nice flat finish. And that seems to give a really nice satin type finish. We use a mix of boiled linseed oil and poly with a little bit of thinner in. And that seems to go on and dry without any problems. So it's all about the wood, really.
Mm-hmm.
I still can't get over how you've got wood from a table in your garden, and a good idea to make friends with local joiners and things like that.
Oh yeah, well the beach. I mean, there was a local rugby club were throwing out these tables, and a friend came around and said, "Oh, do you want some hardwood, Simon? We're getting rid of some tables." And I went round there and I looked and I saw the tops, and they were obviously chipboard. You know, it was delaminating and it was horrible. But these tables had got solid beech legs. They were shaped, but by the time you cleaned them up, and it's beautiful. So, you know, I think so the central rails on the back, I try to make the center a bit stronger if I can. So that's beech from table legs from a local rugby club.
A couple of years ago, I inherited a couple tabletops from a school, and they're really big. They're like I don't know, like 10 foot long, and it's rock maple, and it is as stable and as flat as you could possibly imagine. They're almost a little too big to deal with. It takes quite a bit to work with chopping a piece off of them. It's not pretty maple, but it's very stable. Mountains of that stuff now.
Got a few people in the chat saying how they like people throw away all types of amazing material and loving reclaiming. I've made those things for the Jurg's Cup out of table legs, and now I'm back from my trip and come from COVID. Today I was just looking at the last few. One's going to someone I know, and I'm going to try something else on them. But once I've got them right, my aim is to go and find some charity shop tables and pull the legs off, or buy them and then pull the legs off them, and do the reclaiming thing, because I think it's such a good idea, and make a few more. So just say thank you again, Simon, for coming along today. We've already talked for an hour and 40 minutes. It just goes so quickly.
Well, thanks ever so much for having me, and I've seen you guys on all of your YouTube channels, so it's been a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and we see Simon most weeks, I think, in the live streams.
If I can get on.
If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see Simon's wearing one of the Guitar Builder Collective shirts. I promise I will sort out my new supplier so they can go worldwide. At the moment, I think you can only get them in the UK and Europe and America. But doing things like buying the shirts really helps support me making these things, because there's the cost of all of the streaming software, the distribution channels for the podcast as well. And also you can join the YouTube membership. So I just want to thank the people that are members. That's Owen Kelly, Electric Lady Guitars, Adair Guitars, BB Guitars, Simon. Thank you, Simon. Mr. Glyn's Pickups, Dave Dickens. Dave, we've just lost. He's had to run off. And Custom Unlimited Designs. A number of those are in the chat at the moment. Brilliant. I'll just let you know what's coming up in the next few episodes. So we're back to Thursdays from next week, and we're back to the setup where the last Thursday of each month, so that's Thursday coming, is going to be 2 hours earlier than normal, which makes it a bit harder for people in America, but makes it a bit easier for people in the Southern Hemisphere. And we've got Joe from Hello Sailor Effects definitely talking about what he people describe as snake oil in a lot of his videos, but the mojo of vintage components, but also the fact that he has a YouTube channel, which I'm finding fascinating. It's a little bit too geeky for me. I can't quite follow along with everything, but he takes apart cheap pedals and puts vintage components in them, and then demonstrates a bit about how the sounds change. And one thing I've noticed him doing recently is in some of the pedals where they have diodes to clip the sounds, and there's obviously a lot of talk about which type of diode you have, he puts in silicon and germanium but on a 3-way switch. So one of the positions is not having clipping at all. And in the videos I've seen where he's got it, so you can switch between the type of clipping you prefer, I've always preferred it without the clipping there. There's something about maybe it's just the pedal choice he has. It's really interesting. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to hearing a bit about that from him. We've got Mark and Steve from Ferrotone Studios the week after. They have a channel which reviews guitars, reviews pedals, talks about upgrading parts and changing parts. They've played loads of guitars, so we can talk to them a bit about design choices maybe that affect players, because they also play together, they perform together, but also maybe they've noticed particular brands doing different things. I've also seen them a lot at guitar shows looking at boutique brands. They're big supporters of those, so we can chat to them a bit about that. Then we've got Bobby Jarvis Jr., who's a guitar player who teacher as well, and has got a big sort of online teaching school. I don't want to talk to him just about playing, because he also does reviews of guitars as well. So he's got that kind of. But I thought it'd be good to get that kind of someone that teaches guitar, what they might be saying to their pupils about buying guitars and guitars as well as playing. And then we've got Paul that you mentioned earlier, Simon, Iron House Studios coming. Also, Menno was in the chat. Going to sort out a date for him to come on. He's the guy that moved his entire workshop set up to Ecuador in the rainforest and has to deal with things that are totally different to other guitar builders' issues, like the wildlife in the
And humidity.
Yeah. Oh yes.
My brain went snakes, and then it went humidity.
Ray's just saying I'm not a fan of fuzz puzzles. I love fuzz, absolutely love it. But for some reason, the pedal that Joe from Hello Sailor just took apart is the Joyo Voodoo Fuzz pedal, Voodoo Octave. I've had 2 of them because I broke my first one. I was just a bit too aggressive with it, and they're quite cheap pedals. And then I don't know what happened second one. I must have sold it for some reason, unless I broke that one too. And I've just bought a Donna Fuzz, which is really similar octave pedal. And I think they're brilliant on bass. Love them on bass. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. It's good to see you all here. If you're listening on the audio, don't forget, leave a review and stuff like that. Really helps, especially as we're new to this. And until next time, happy strumming, everyone.
So long.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thanks ever so much.
Bye.
Bye.
The Guitar Builders Collective is a group of like-minded people from all around the world at different stages of their guitar building journey. You can join us over on our forum to seek advice or share tips on guitar building processes, materials and tools, or just to share your builds. On YouTube, we have a regular podcast of Guitar Building Chat where you can join the live stream or watch back on past episodes. Our Instagram page shares posts of members' builds and links you direct to their accounts. And for those of you on Facebook, we've got a private group that you can join, share and chat along with. The Guitar Builders Collective is... Oh, that was weird. It cut off early and didn't stop on the screen. Right, let's end.